Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from Powersonic and Apprentice 121. I thought we'd have a revisit on the electric van. Been through a winter on this now, so we've got a bit of direct experience of trying to work this over both short and long distances, how it's held up, the servicing, the fuel costs, and what I think of these particular vans and what we're looking at for the future because of those views. But let's take a look around and see how this has actually held up over about 20,000 miles or so of use in around the first year of owning it. So the first thing to say in terms of maintenance is that there's been none, so it hasn't had to have a service. I've not really had to do anything to it in terms of tyres or anything like that. It's just been a case of filling it up with electric and driving it. And as you can see in here, it's a bit dusty from the road, but otherwise as good as the day we got it 20,000 miles ago. And that's the beauty of the electric vehicles. There isn't a lot of maintenance to do on them. They don't wear out brake pads and discs as fast. You're not replacing all the other component parts such as clutches, gearboxes, and the same with your servicing. It really is just pollen filters, checking your tyre tread, and yeah, there's less to go wrong essentially. We did get the service plan with this really because I was concerned about the battery and the warranty of that and the mileage we were anticipating to do. Otherwise, it's one of those where you maybe wouldn't even need to go to that degree. Benefit of it is it does look after all the tyre replacements. I had heard that electric vehicles wear those out a little bit faster. Not seeing excessive tyre wear. I'll show you the tread on these 20,000 miles in and you can make up your own mind. But yeah, pretty much as it was when we got it and not missed a beat in terms of reliability. So I've actually just given the van a clean over outside and inside. These are working vehicles. They do get dusty and messy, but we do try and keep them nice and neat on all of the vans we run. It's the thing that customers see, they see you pull up in it, they see what you get in and out of it, and it leaves an impression, I think. So we do try and look after those. And I'm about to go off and do a solar install down in Peterborough, and I thought we'd start with a nice fresh van to go down there in. I've just come back off holiday as well, so it felt like a good time to reset the vehicle and get it to a nice condition. But yeah, inside it's not really suffered any wear and tear, like I say. It is just taking us from site to site. Everything works as it did. The cruise control is a big win in electric vehicles. It's a good way to try and manage your range if you've set to the speed limit or the speed you're wanting to travel, and let the vehicle look after that. It does tend to do regen a bit better than the driver could. I have seen that Ford have got some smart regen on their Transit, where it knows the down and up slopes on roundabouts and it will work out its braking and stuff for that. This doesn't go quite that far, but in terms of the cruise control, really do recommend that. It's just easier as well while you are out on the motorways. The range on these, now we're back into spring, isn't an issue. I think they say it's 171 miles out the box, so to speak. When I got it in eco mode, it was coming up with a range of 182 miles. That has now dropped to 176. However, we have just been through winter, coming back into spring, and I've noticed it creeping up. I think it was like 175 or something when we first got out of winter. So I'm expecting that might start to report a higher number. Don't know, we'll see. The range when it's in normal mode is about 166 miles. So a similar kind of drop off from the 171. And again, I'd expect as the kilowatts per mile or whatever it is they use to work these things out improves, now we haven't got the cold weather, is what I did notice, and we did a lot of travelling this winter on the motorways, is that when it was cold and we were at motorway speeds, those distances are a joke. They're nothing like what you can achieve. It's a totally different concept to diesel vehicles, where if you're at motorway speeds or 60 to 70 miles an hour, you can generally get better economy than running around the town at 30 miles an hour, whereas in electric vehicles it's the other way around. Your economy is way more predictable and reliable at those town and urban area speeds rather than out at the motorway. If we've got this fully laden and we take it at 70 miles an hour, we're lucky to be reaching 100 miles before we need to be sitting on a rapid charger to fill it back up again. And that's the other thing with these, when you are using rapid chargers, you can only really take them to 80% of their range. So if you're starting out with a full charge, your full 166 miles if you want your heating on, and then you've dropped that down to 30 miles or whatever, you can't get it back to 166 on a rapid charger without sitting there for the last 20% going very slowly. So you're really only going to want to take it to that 80%, and you're looking at sort of 145 to 150 miles that case, which is, again, you're working around 100 and 120 mile distance, which is fine for factoring in stops and stuff. But when we're going off down to like the likes of Swindon, where I've been down to, and you're having to put in 3 or 4 charges each way to get there. It becomes frustrating, especially when you're at those motorway speeds and you maybe only getting an hour or so down the road before you're having to stop and do that. In the springtime, as we are now, I've got this trip down to Peterborough, and I'm not anticipating I will have to do any extra recharging. I may lose maybe 10% of the range through going those motorway speeds, as opposed to 20 or 30% when it's cold. That's the difference it makes. I've asked people about the VW buses, because we've been considering maybe looking at those next time when we're changing our vehicles over, because apparently they report more accurate mileage for those motorway speeds and in the colder weather. I mean, that's what we're looking for. It's not something pretending to us at the start of a journey. You can fire this up in February when it's -10 and it'll honestly tell you that it thinks it's going to do 166 miles, when you know full well, even if you're not at motorway speeds, it's going to be very lucky to achieve 140, 130. That is something that needs working on. I think that if that's the drop off they expect in those temperatures, it should be built into the firmware and software of the vehicle to tell you that, and not set unrealistic expectations and then plummet the range down as soon as it starts to do the calculations based on driving data that's coming back through the system. But anyway, that is what it is on that front. This has been nice to drive. That's the other thing to say. In eco mode, I think it drops down to about 60% power output. It's about 80% in normal mode and 100% if you go in the power mode. Don't quote me on that. I think it's roughly that. In the summer, I'm quite happy to drive it in eco mode. The aircon works good enough to keep the cab cool, as long as it's not like 50 degrees outside. It's perfectly adequate to keep the cab at a nice cool temperature. I've no issue with running around 60% power. We're not thrashing these things about the streets. So that is absolutely fine. Gives you that extra 10 miles or so of workable range. In the winter, I point blank refuse to sit in the cold. The heating goes off if you're in eco mode. So it's been in normal mode all through the winter. Keeps your heating on. Your gauge for your maximum power consumption in eco goes up a bit. And obviously, you know, that's due to your personal choice. If you want to sit there in jumpers and long johns, keep it in eco mode, trying to extract every mile you can, fair play to you, but that is not what we use vehicles for. It's not why we spend a lot of money on them. These are not cheap. It's to keep staff comfortable in a nice environment and drive around safely at the end of the day, and that involves being warm. So yes, that was another factor in the winter that's different to the spring and summer. But again, I don't think that impacts in a massive way. You're maybe looking at 10 miles or so overall on the range difference. One thing to say with the charging infrastructure is I've generally found it, again, hit and miss. I use Sat Maps, paid for the premium, whatever it is, I don't know, but you get the free version and then the more advanced one, which will do route planning and stuff. And using that was really helpful because you can see when the charge points have last been used, you know if they've got people sat on them. And I tend to use InstaVolt as a go-to. I know some people don't like that network because it's quite expensive, but I found it's pretty reliable, and that's what I'm looking for in terms of knowing I can go somewhere and get charged up. I tried the BP Pulses for a bit. They were very much not working very often, so that was a no-no. The Shell ones seem okay, and there's also lots of new ones cropping up now, GridServe at motorway services, that are pretty robust and reliable as well. And your pricing is sort of between 70 and 80 pence per kilowatt hour for those rapid charges, so it is expensive in comparison to being able to do it on your own drive. We do have solar and battery storage at home. I do have an EV charger at home. The trouble is when we're going off working down in Redditch, for example, I'm not coming back home that night. We're staying away, generally not in hotels because of the issues with theft. Touch on that in a minute in terms of tools in the back of your vans. We look for holiday cabins and stuff on leisure parks where you're not likely to have your van done over, and there isn't often EV charging facilities there, so you're kind of tied to the rapid chargers, both on the way there and on the way back, and the time we're running around away from home. If I am working locally, these work an absolute treat. I would say if you're a contractor who's working within a 30-mile radius of where you live, an electric vehicle will serve you very well if you've got access to overnight charging at home. You can use the cheap tariffs, about 7.5 pence a kilowatt hour for your charging up overnight. And generally speaking, there's enough hours in that slot to cover you off to get a nice full battery on a van. You know, we're looking at 180 mile range. If you're putting in 7 kilowatts an hour, roughly speaking, that's like 4 miles basically a kilowatt hour is pushing it. But if you worked on 3, you're putting in 20, 25 miles per hour of charging. So if you've got a 4-hour window, that's 100 miles. If you've got a 7-hour window, a little bit more. And again, even at the peak rates, you're well under what you'd pay on rapid chargers. If you're lucky enough to have solar as well, which I am able to put some of that export generation into the van should I wish. It's a trade-off because I know I can sell it back to the grid now for around 16 pence. So it's if I want to just use the cheap overnight tariff where sometimes we get paid to take energy on Octopus Agile, or if I want to use what I'm generating to run the vehicle and know it's been run on pure sunshine. That's a personal choice at the end of the day. I'd do a bit of both, so we do use that. And it works well. The wall box syncs up really nicely to see the solar export. I am going to replace that with a Give Energy charger because they will stop the battery, so my all-in-one discharging into the van. It involves a bit more manual control to stop that from happening. I've got on top of that now, so as long as I set the charge times for the same window and when the solar is exporting, that when the sun has gone in, I remember to knock the charge rate down, otherwise it will empty the battery. It's just the way those things integrate, and that's the same for most charge points. The only ones that do it reliably is the Zappi and the Give Energy EV charger combined with its own ecosystem. That's the only way that actually works in my experience. And yeah, that is what it is. The cabin's been comfortable to sit in and drive. That's one of the questions I get asked a lot. It's a good seating position, a lot better than the Citroen Dispatch I used to drive before. The Apple CarPlay and radio is fine. The only issue is it doesn't connect over Bluetooth. You have to use a USB lead, and that seems to fail from time to time. They like a really short lead. It seems a bit fussy around that, but it's been working, no issues. Yeah, is what it is really. If you want to see the full rundown of the cab, where all the storage is and stuff, I've shared a video on these vans already when I first got it, so go and look at that because I go into it. But you've got a bit of storage under this seat here as a quick overview. Little slot up in at the top and a very tiny little glove box over there. The side pockets in the doors, and the rest is all in the back. And that is kind of what it is. I'll take you for a little run round the rest of the outside, and you can see if you've got any questions you want me to answer, drop them in the comments and I'll try and reply to everybody. I would say overall, I am happy enough with the concept of driving an electric van, but in the winter, it is unworkable for us to carry on like this. I don't mind doing it myself, but I couldn't do that around the rest of my employees because we just wouldn't be productive enough in the range we cover. And that is because of YouTube. We get customer inquiries from all over the UK, and we do like to go and do those projects because they're interesting. And that, I guess, is the change in our business I wasn't expecting at the time we bought these vans. And in hindsight, I wouldn't have done it because of that. But if we were just working locally, I would be quite happy to have them. It wouldn't be a problem, and I wouldn't be complaining whatsoever, basically. So factor that in. If you do a lot of travelling, if you've got fleet that runs hundreds of miles up and down the motorway, I'd say wait for the minute. Maybe take a VW Buzz on trial and see how you get on with that, because a few people have said they're much better for that. But if you're looking at this wheelbase and it's the same for Peugeot, Vauxhall, Citroen, it's all the same. You know, it's one of those where I would say for long distances, it's currently not something I would recommend, in short. So yeah, I think that sums it up. We'll go look around the van and then close the video up. So don't hate on me, I haven't cleaned the wheels as yet, but the bodywork's had a bit of a clean down. Need to do all in the wheel arches. The black colour does scratch quite badly, so there is some noticeable scratches on that. Anyone who's had a black vehicle will sympathise. The back is really bad. It's been caught on a few bushes and stuff again. Tradesmen, I'm going to close this video on vehicle issues, but we park against bushes and walls to try and close those doors up from scumbags. And again, down this side, I need to sort the wheel arches out, but otherwise it's in pretty good nick. Nice and clean and shiny. Around the front, pretty similar. So you can see on there, it's looking pretty good. Let's have a little chat and finish this video off about the vehicle theft we've had. So you'll see we've not had this racked out, and there's two reasons for that. The primary one is we no longer rack our vehicles and store anything in them because we are sick of having stuff stolen out of the back of them when we are parked at work, on the drive at home, or are in hotels when we are away. There's been a campaign recently where I think about 300 vans went down to London outside the Houses of Parliament to protest and try and raise issue around this, and there's a petition that's been started and is out there going as well. Unfortunately, I was away on holiday, so I couldn't get down there myself. I would have loved to have gone and joined in with that. I have shared my experiences directly from having vans broken into in the past. We've had loads of them done, and it is sickening, it's gutting, and even now, the last time we was done, the vans were empty. However, you've still got the problem of the door being wrecked and you've not been able to go to work while you've had a replacement vehicle provided, and all the rest of that. The petition is around the second-hand sale of power tools at car boot sales. It makes a lot of sense. If somebody can't evidence that they've got ownership of that legitimately, they shouldn't be able to sell it on a car boot or an internet auction site. It's as simple as that for me. I think there's a good chain of thought around that. Whether it's workable or not in the way that that's proved by manufacturers, surely with serial numbers and things, it's not beyond the realms of what's possible in the modern world. You know, with all the apps and stuff that are out there, it should be something that can be easily put in place, and hopefully that is done. But yeah, you see in the back here, we offload everything. They're left totally empty. We use the Milwaukee pack out stuff. It works an absolute treat. We're about 4 or 5 years in now of using that, and I've shared loads of videos on this channel of our pack out setup. It is a bit on the extreme side across all of the vehicles. It was an investment and a half, but it is a lot easier than having to sort out replacement tools alongside the issues with fans. Insurance now is a non-starter. It's just through the roof because of the claims we've had of the past, and yeah, that's our approach with it. It's just one of those things. The other aspect to it with an electric vehicle is obviously weight. These do seem to struggle a bit more with the load that you're carrying. I would say that the drop-off in mileage isn't severe. You know, you're maybe talking in the 2 or 3% margins based on the weight you're carrying. You get much more of a drop-off if you put stuff on the roof. So an absolute no to roof racks, ladders up there, pipe and conduit tubes, none of that. Don't even go there because your range will fall off a cliff. As long as you put everything in the back, it's not that much of a factor. But we thought dead weight, carrying about bits we don't use in terms of wood or sorting or racking or whatever you want to put in here, was just a waste. So we've not done it because we don't like leaving stuff in, and because we was concerned about the weight of it all. I'll try and drop links in if I can find them to the campaign that's kicked off around all of this. I've done stuff in the past myself. I think I featured in the Daily Mail a few months ago again on the video I shared. One of the times I was done at a car park down in Heathrow, and I've put posts and stuff out consistently about this, trying to get manufacturers to make the load areas of these things safer. I could go press on the side of this now, and the metal is so thin. The locks are so easy to get past with just a bloody tin opener and opening and popping the doors. There should be a much bigger effort in providing a secure load area for vans. It just seems like there's no effort in it, to be fair. You know, people will always find a way when they want to get in somewhere. We know this, but let's not make it so easy that they can do it with rudimentary tools. There are additions you can put on, like a cage and things as well, so you can have a full-on cage system put in the back of your van, which is maybe a decent idea if you've got no option but to keep tools in there. Again, with electric vehicles and the weight of that, it's not something that I would think could be workable on that front at the minute, but if you've got diesel vans, there's a good shout with that. All the van guardians and stuff and alarms, I think, are a waste of time because these criminals do not care about CCTV, they do not care about alarms, they're not bothered, they really don't care, they're all covered up. You see the videos online where they pull up in a car alongside the van, they're inside it in seconds, they've emptied it. A lot of them don't even bother covering their faces these days, so clearly there's an issue there in terms of punishment for deterrence. So there's work to do on that front as well. But yeah, bit of a bad note to end this little van catch-up on. I've got 20,000 miles in. Overall, as I said, I'm quite happy with it. It's not cost me any money in terms of maintenance. I've got through the winter, as much as I've spent too much time on rapid chargers and trying to find them. But that's maybe a life lesson, and hopefully the network's going to improve. All of this nonsense about these extra charges that are coming online all the time, it's just not enough for the demand that's coming. There is a huge wave of EVs yet to hit the roads as we move into times of everyone having an electric vehicle, and we are absolutely kidding ourselves on that front at the minute, based on my experience of trying to use the charging network around the UK. Certainly in the area I live, I think there's 4 rapid chargers serving the whole area of about 15,000 people living here, which is bonkers, and there's a lot of electric vehicles now. And the same with that last mile or two as well in the DNO network. The voltage on my street, due to the PV that's on there, climbs up to around the maximum at 253 volts at midday at the minute. And then at around 12:30, when everyone switches their battery storage systems on to charge and their electric vehicles to charge, that voltage drops off quite considerably, which is converse to what used to happen. You would have a peak in voltage sometimes overnight as that consumption dropped away, and that's why they tried to encourage people with off-peak tariffs for storage heaters and stuff to try and counteract some of that. Now that consumption is so extreme on a street-to-street basis, the voltage can vary quite drastically. So I don't know what the DNOs are going to do with that, because they can't tap down to try and cover off the solar generation and then have to tap back up again for the peak demand that comes after midnight. They're either going to have to look at allocating charging slots that are individual to people down the street. So my off-peak might be different to my next door neighbours or someone down the road who's on the same phase as me. Or that the battery banks we're all sitting on in our homes are bigger to try and accommodate our daily consumption, and then that integrates with a grid to charge up smartly based on the infrastructure that's in the road. Or the DNO are going to have to spend a lot of money and annoy a lot of people by digging up all the towns and cities around the UK to upgrade this stuff so we can make this work for every household, because we're pretending at the minute that that's a realistic probability with the infrastructure we have, and a lot of the EV enthusiasts are so switched off to that, it's embarrassing the lack of knowledge they have in that area. And as electricians we see that because we're dealing with that last mile or two day to day and week to week. The high volt grid around the UK is very flexible and more than capable of passing that power around to meet the demand. No problem, that data's been proven. The issue is the last mile or two and everybody coming onto that system wanting to use it in exactly the same way. It's a problem that isn't going away, and one that I hope can be fixed in the most environmentally and cost effective way possible. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to come down to smart tech and all of this stuff talking to each other on a street by street basis, and then we have all of the problems around data and sharing that, and people get upset enough with smart meters. So yeah, it's a tricky one, it really is, but all we can do is try. And as installers fitting PV and EV, that's what we're hoping to do. And as this technology develops and maybe battery systems become more powerful and less intensive in their resources, as the technology and chemistry evolves and changes, it becomes more accessible to more people. And yeah, just as a final thought on this video about the electric van, any questions around the chat we've had throughout the course of this video or the vehicle itself, please do drop them in below. Massive thanks to everyone who's got involved with the channel. I think we've passed 12,000 subs now, which is just nuts for a guy who's just talking about stuff rather than been flashy in the way I edit videos and been an influencer and stuff. That's not what I am. It is just basically sharing the day-to-day life of electricians to try and show trainees and apprentices what it's like and record this stuff for me to look back on when I'm older grey at the cool stuff I did with my kids. And to get to 12,000 subs is way, way further than I thought I would ever get with this channel. So a massive, massive thank you to everybody who has followed along. And if you've enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up on this video. And if you're not subscribed already, go and do that, because it does make a massive difference to how far I can take this. I'm committed to it now. I want to see how far I can get and see if I can run with some of the cool kids in town who are way more handsome and have way more personality than me and are much better at editing this kind of stuff. Let's see if we can go and mix it with some of those guys and girls, because that would be pretty epic. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.